Patch 13.10 is a huge one, with tons of changes to items being the main focus, but also some AP ratio buffs to Akshan, Kalista, Kindred and Vayne, as Riot encouraged some more weird and wonderful build options, most likely though due to the new Rageblade. It is going to be impossible to really know the impact of this patch, as the meta could stay fairly similar or completely turn upside down. So make sure you check back next week to get an accurate updated tier list after the patch drops. For now though, here's our initial predictions. Now as always, we're going to start off in the top lane, and one of the biggest changes coming is that Unleash Teleport now upgrades at 10 minutes rather than 14. This is a massive change, and it's instantly going to make Teleport much more viable again, and also indirectly nerf other champions that rely on other summoner spells like Flash Ghost, like Darius as a good example. Another big change is that both lanes' side lane minions now spawn at the same time as the mid wave, except for that first minion wave, which should have a fairly big impact on the pace of the game throughout. Homeguard start time is lowered to 14 minutes down from 20, which means you'll be able to get to lanes and fights earlier and faster than before. And the blast cones that spawn over the river walls won't be there so early anymore, moving from 5 minutes up to 9 minutes, making those early ganks a lot less punishing. The main item changes are coming mostly to AD carry, assassin and support. However, there are a ton of minor changes to most other items in the game too. For example, in the top lane there's plenty of price or build path changes, but also some buffs to Gore Drinker, Hold Breaker and Stride Breaker. Sterak's Gauge now has Tenacity and Divine Sunderer now has more AD, but is nerfed overall. Huge nerfs to Force of Nature, and with the massive buffs to LDR mean tanks are going to take a bit of a big hit this week. Don't forget to check out the official patch notes for in-depth descriptions of all the item changes, but we aren't going to go into too much detail in this video because otherwise we'll be here until Christmas. So how does the tier list look? Well, for the top lane in the S tier we have Akshan, Jax, Kayle, Kled, Olaf, Pantheon, Poppy, Rengar, Riven and Singed. Kayle's recent changes alongside these item adjustments could make her a bit crazy. She's already pretty much auto win once she gets level 16, but with these more positive changes it makes it even more true. The teleport buffs also benefit Kayle further, and with her growing success in recent weeks she could be one of the biggest winners. Kayle's main issue is getting heavily shut down in the early game, but with Riot aiming to reduce the impact of early ganks and roams, and with the minions and blast cones, it could mean she gets through the lane phase on a more consistent basis. TP around the map to get as much farm and experience as you can, get level 16, get those items online and one-shot entire teams. GG, top gap. Now with AD carries ultimately most likely being the biggest winners this patch, why not pick a top laner who just already was strong and is a perfect pick to take down those pesky marksmen. Jax is a fantastic top lane duelist side lane machine with an ability to 1v9 games like no other. And with loads of people spamming Master Yi, pick Jax, pressure E and take him down. Pantheon is another top laner that's already in a great position too, and one that is only likely to get even better this patch. The Spartan has various item builds already offering a ton of damage and durability, and the changes and buffs to some lethality items and mythics could make him even stronger than he already is. Pantheon has been maintaining a seriously impressive win rate recently in both of these solo lanes. So if you haven't already been playing it, it could be a great time to start, because at some point surely soon he's gonna get nerfed. If you do want to stay up to date with the best Pantheon builds and runes with the new patch, then download Mobalytics and import the optimal setup straight into your client in Champion Select. From the highest win rate builds to what the pros are using, and even the cheeky sleeper OP builds too. So click the link in the description to get started. Moving into the jungle now, and plenty of changes to assassins, bruisers and tanks that could see a real shake-up. First things first, Ghostblade is now a mythic item with a movement speed and ghosting buff that lasts for 6 seconds now on a 45-second cooldown. This item is definitely going to be picked on a ton of lethality assassins. Duskblade has been reworked and now you become untargetable rather than invisible. Prowler's Claw no longer has a dash, and the Collector got a pretty hefty buff to its lethality. In the God tier we have Kha'Zix and Master Yi, and in the S tier we have Bel'Veth, Echo, Evelynn, Fiddlesticks, Gragas, Hecarim, Jarvan and Rengar. Plenty of champions who were already strong and unaffected, or ones that were already strong and likely to get even better. One champion that is definitely going to reap the rewards of this patch is Kha'Zix.
Change is good.
Kha'Zix has been dominating the jungle ever since his buffs a few patches ago, buffing the damage of his Q. And with the item buffs benefiting him too, and the item nerfs to tanks also helping him, he's probably going to be one of the best champions in the game. Despite this guy being relatively one-dimensional in his playstyle, his evolutions and his skill ceiling allow him to bypass that and outplay his enemies in all sorts of situations. So whether it's weaving in and out of fights with his stealth and dash, or just one-shotting someone out of nowhere before they can even blink, Kha'Zix's damage is insane, and so is his 1v9 potential. so make sure you watch out for the bug this patch, and if you don't play it, it could be worth banning it. Another likely big winner this patch is Master Yi, who again is already in an exceptional position in the meta. The changes this week are more than likely going to benefit him even further. He can still build Kraken and Shield Bow, but Rage Blade is going to be insane now. The new Dusk Blade could be intriguing too, and Blade of the Ruin King is untouched. Enchanting supports are receiving some attention too with their new item, which we'll explain more later, but Master Yi with enchanters on his side is some of the easiest freeload you'll ever experience. Yi is maintaining a ridiculously high win rate across all ranks already, so don't forget he's probably not going to get any worse. With the changes to Prowler's Claw this week, unfortunately this does mean some champions are going to become a little bit rubbish. Rek'Sai in the jungle and Renekton in the top lane are without a doubt crying at the sight of these patch notes with their reliance on that Prowler's dash. Rek'Sai has been in a fine spot for a while, flying a little bit under the radar, but this item change is probably going to mean she needs a mid-scope update. She relies so heavily on that dash to gap close to pop that knock up, and without it, if she doesn't have flash, it's just so easy for her enemies to escape. Now this doesn't mean we might not see a different playstyle emerge, maybe players will adapt to more bruiser type playstyle, and we're interested to see how she pans out with this. But unfortunately we do expect the worst, and therefore have moved her down to the C tier for now. Moving down to the mid lane, and some of the usual suspects are still going to be super strong with no real changes to Mage's items at all. However, the big nerfs to magic resist options, especially Force of Nature, will only make the mid lane better. In the God tier we have Aurelion Sol and Annie, and in the S tier we have Akshan, Anivia, Cassiopeia, Ahri, Fizz, Pantheon, Talon, Swain, Katarina and Vladimir. So the main item changes that could affect the mid lane this week are the assassin ones we've just covered in the jungle section. And one of the biggest winners here could be Talon. Talon is one of those mid lane champions who you never really want to come up against, because when you do go against a good one, you regret all of your life decisions up to this moment. Talon's ability to roam and impact the map is nuts, and all that mobility from his E means he can be anywhere in no time at all. And this ability also makes him very hard to gank and punish in the lane phase. Talon has immense amounts of burst damage once he comes online with a few items, and with the new Ghost Blade this could be a match made in heaven. Talon's already been performing much better than people realised recently, and these changes are almost definitely going to help him out even further. Vladimir has not exactly been weak recently, but this patch we expect him to come back in full swing. He is a safe scaling mid laner with a crazy amount of mid to late game AoE damage and carry potential. Vladimir can literally waltz into a team fight, pop down that ultimate combo and watch an entire enemy team simply obliterate. And now the fact that not every champion in the game can rush a Force of Nature, he's definitely going to be far more viable. Now every time there's big changes to the game, Katarina mains seem to come up with about 80 different builds, from hybrid ones to AD ones to full AP ones and everything in between. But there are for sure a few interesting things to think about with all the changes coming into those items this patch. She's definitely an OTP champion to watch out for, her roaming and her carry potential will always be there, and as long as she's got a playable matchup, she'll never be a champion to underestimate. All Katarina needs is one good fight, a couple of resets, and the next thing you know she's farming back-to-back pentakills. So here's a reminder that Katarina exists, and watch out for her this patch. Over to those AD carries now, and this is where some of the biggest changes take place this week. Rageblade, Infinity Edge and Navori are all now mythic items, and Kraken Slayer and Immortal Shield Bow demote down to legendary ones. Gwynsu's now also has a pretty juicy appeal to hybrid champions too with its new ability power addition. So get ready to see a ton of experimenting with this one. Gale Force is staying as a mythic item though, so you can't build it with IE anymore. Storm Razor now has a movement speed boost rather than a slow, and Static Shiv is making its grand return. And looks to be a bit crazy too, with that passive allowing it to electric shock 12 times in the late game. Here's the big one though, because Lord Dominic's Regards is going to be absolutely broken now, as its new passive deals up to 25% bonus physical and magical damage against champions with a greater max health than you. There's also plenty of other tweaks to price and stats to items like Mercurial Scimitar, Phantom Dancer, the Collector, Mortal Reminder and Bloodthirster. So with all of these changes there's definitely going to be some big winners and some sorry losers. So let's have a quick look at how we think it'll impact the meta. In the God tier we have Kog'Maw, and we'll explain why shortly. In the S tier we have Draven, Ezreal, Jinx, Kai'Sa, Karthus, Seraphine and Switch. Now Kog'Maw could literally be the biggest winner out of every single champion in the game this patch. He was already in a great spot and very underrated, and now for various reasons he might just be a tad bit broken. Firstly, Mythics has always been a bit of a weird one for Kog'Maw, but now all he needs is the new Rageblade and he's instantly online. And the rest of his HP shredding on hit build is still going to be incredibly strong. Enchanters are also going to be more common with the new item coming, and they're already in a good position too. And let's be honest, we all know how terrifying a Kog'Maw can be with a Lulu, Melio or Yuumi in his back pocket. Ezreal has been pumping out some huge damage recently, and this is only going to get better with this patch. His mythic of choice really hasn't been that important, but now Navori Quickblades takes that spot, his typical build just gets even better. Essence Reaver, Navori Quickblades, the new and OP Lord Dominic's Regards, and then items like Shield Bow BT. And of course, if you do need it, you've got Muramana too, which will all make him seriously pack a punch, but also equally be as difficult to take down, with all those defensive and sustain options too. Ezreal's damage is much higher than people realise, and he can dash around the fight relentlessly with his E being on such a low cooldown thanks to his Q and Navori Quickblades. The best Ezreal players are already making the most out of just how strong he is, and he's only going to get better in patch 13.10. Kha'Zix is undoubtedly one of the champions who will be making a grand return this week. Hybrid itemization and this champion are basically a match made in heaven, and she will have a ton of different options and build paths to go for depending on every game. You've got a traditional AD carry, you've got AP Muramana, you've got on hits, or you can go for a combination of all of the above. However, it's the new Gwynsu's Rageblade and the buffed Lord Dominic's which are what we feel could make Kha'Zix absolutely broken. Imagine the damage you could deal to any type of target with Rageblade, Kraken Slayer, Nash's Tooth, and Lord Dominic's Regards. Tons of damage, tons of burst, kite, and everything in between. 3 evolved abilities, some insane power spikes, and a lot of free LP. Unfortunately though, this patch could have a pretty bad impact on Jhin. The fact that you can no longer build Gale Force and Infinity Edge means you're almost definitely going to have to prioritize IE and lose out on the iconic Gale Force for him. Now, I'm sure players will experiment with various other options like the buffed Collector, the Rapid Fire and Storm Razor changes, and everything else. But this all just sounds a little bit cheesy and not really too consistent. And consistency is always what Jhin's had going for him. Let's see what Riot have planned for Jhin in the next few patches and go from there. But for the time being, we've moved him down to the A tier. Finally, let's have a look at those supports now, and we've got a new mythic item, which is called Echoes of Halia. Now this reminds us of the old Athene's Unholy Grail designed for healing and shielding AP support enchanters, and when combined with Imperial Mandate, which has been demoted to a legendary item, this combo could be absolutely lethal. Some more changes to Moonstone, Radiant Virtue, Ardent Censer, Chemtech Putrefier, Zeke's Herald and Nike's Vow will all combine to have a fairly big impact. So let's see how the support meta shapes up this patch. In the S tier, we've got Janna, Karma, Maokai, Melio, Rakan, Senna, Sona, Taric, and Thresh. Karma could be a huge success this patch with the new support item. The OGs will remember just how good she used to be with Athenes, and this new Echoes of Halia is giving us major flashbacks. As we mentioned already, the combination of Echoes with Mandate could be a crazy strong combination, and Karma is the prime example of a champion who could thrive off it. And hopefully this will mean that Karma can finally bounce back after really not having too much of a great season. Karma is a support that you often do forget about, but when she is strong, she is super oppressive and very hard to shut down. She offers fantastic utility for laning and early fights and can always have impact from very early on. So pick her up again this patch and let us know how you get on. From Karma to the Charmer, and Rakan is getting through another patch with no nerfs. And you should all know by now just how strong this slippery sucker is. Rakan's mobility allows him to set up fights from as early as level 1 and gives him the opportunity to dive in and out, shake it all about, and win most fights too. Rakan offers so much utility with his shielding and sustain. If you land a 5-man ultimate charm setup into your W, you're probably going to carry the fight and feel like an absolute boss while doing it. He may be squishy and take a bit of practice to play optimally, but he's not as punishing as he's been in the past. And with his win rate being so high recently, there's no reason not to pick him. Yuumi has slowly been climbing back up to her best recently, and these changes will only have a positive impact. She's already doing what she does best of making certain champions pop off even more than they should. And if she partners up with a Kha'Zix, a Hecarim or a Vladimir, it can be pretty unplayable for the enemy team. The sustain and healing, the poke, the utility, and everything else she offers is one thing. But the fact she's so hard to punish makes her such a safe pick too. And if her AD carry sucks, see you later, I'll go jump on someone else and make them carry instead. We definitely expect Kog'Maw Yuumi to be a driving force in this patch, so be ready for it and give it a go yourself if you do want to join the dark side. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of our patch 13.10 rundown and predictive tier list. We hope you guys have fun this week with all the changes, and don't forget we'll have an updated tier list video ready for you next week to go over how the meta looks after this patch drops. Feel free to subscribe if you enjoy our content, and make sure you don't forget to download our Mobalytics desktop app before you go. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, take care.